on, bub, for old time's sake, huh?
Did you just call me Blob?
All I'm saying is The Greatest Showman would be so much better if Hugh Jackman just played Wolverine. A million dreams are keeping me awake, bub. Wolverine is one of the most recognizable and well-known members of the X-Men there has ever been and will ever be. With an animal-like rage, sharp claws, and essentially a level of immortality thanks to a strong healing factor, it's easy to see why this character has been around for so long. When you're around long enough, it's inevitable that duplicates, variants, and all-around crazy versions of you start popping up. Wolverine is certainly no exception. Let's take a look at the most powerful versions of Wolverine right now. Wolverine Noir is maybe one of the greatest gumshoes to come out of the Marvel Noir universe. He certainly likes a good fisticuffs, and can pound down a pint as well as any other Wolverine. However, in this universe, he is definitely turned to the weakest version of them all. He doesn't even have his own claws, and basically cosplays as the real Wolverine with knives attached to his hands. He's basically that kid that would hold silverware between his fingers to pretend he's Wolverine, if no one ever told that kid to grow up and get a job. Much like many other characters in the Mangaverse, Wolverine has turned into a crazy version of himself, with slick white hair and an outfit that screams midlife crisis. The manga Wolverine is one interesting take on the character. His bone claws have been replaced with beams of pure energy, which can cut through just about anything. You'd think this would make him far stronger than any other Wolverine we could come up with, but there are several hints to the idea that this Wolverine does not heal quite as well as many others. He has had to have body parts replaced thanks to fights with the likes of other X-Men like Scott Summers. He seemed more fun-loving and much less animalistic, which means most people could probably take him. As you will discover, a long life apparently leads to several children throughout different periods of history. One of Wolverine's most well-known kids is Jimmy Howlett Jr., who was entrusted to Wolverine's fellow soldier during the Iraq War. Jimmy took on the name Jimmy Hudson, after the man who raised him. He possessed the same powers as his birth father, including healing and a nice pair of claws. But he lacks any experience really as a fighter, but definitely as an experimental test subject that helped give Wolverine his rage. As you'll see, comic writers just love putting Wolverine in post-apocalyptic situations. Perhaps the most famous example of this is none other than Old Man Logan. This version of Wolverine is iconic, even though in this future he had given up the superhero gig and attempted to live out the rest of his life in peace with his family in hiding. That didn't last long as an evil gang of Hulks killed his family, forcing him on one last rage. He has lots of experience and great fighting skill, but at some point you just start to get rusty. In the film version of this adaptation, we saw Logan nearly wither away before one final glorious battle that led to his death. This is one of the most well-known versions of the character, but I don't believe he's one of the strongest. The Hooded Man was a version of Wolverine who came from an alternate dystopian future with a group called the New Defenders. He used the body of Galactus of all things to travel back in time, and attempts to find a better place for the people of his time to find a new home. He's called this because he wore a hood, and until he revealed his claws you would never known he was Wolverine. He is very similar to Old Man Logan, only with the desperation that true horror brings. Either that or a severe lack of focus on what is good anymore. Either way, he has the unique quality in a Wolverine of being, wait for it, angry. In another universe, James Howlett was a Japanese samurai by the name of the immortal Mr. Murderhands, or Manji for short. Manji was a brilliant samurai who ended several lives. This would come back to bite him, seeing as his healing and immortality is not so much the result of mutation, but instead a curse from a witch who decided he would live for each life he took. And let's just say it added up. The Weapon X program erased his memory and gave him claws, catching him up to a very similar Wolverine to the one we are used to. Still, Mr. Murderhands is incredibly strong and skilled, but is forced to stick around thanks to a curse. That means his heart probably just isn't in it. The film X-Men Days of Future Past did a great job of adapting the comic storyline of the same name. However, they definitely changed some things up. For example, in the original story, it was not Wolverine who went back in time. Instead, Wolverine stayed back as one of the few remaining X-Men alive to help defend what was left of their dystopian future. This version of Wolverine actually perishes by sacrificing himself against one of the Sentinels that caused an apocalypse. This Sentinel removed all the flesh from Wolverine's body right down to his adamantium skeleton. Even Wolverine apparently couldn't survive that. Earth 1610, also known as the Ultimate Universe, has had incredibly interesting takes on several characters from the main Earth 616 universe. Wolverine is definitely no exception here. The Ultimate Wolverine lacks any sort of leadership or team capabilities that the original one has, making him much less useful in some cases but much more vicious in others. And he has even been able to take on Magneto in ways that the normal Wolverine has not. At the end of the day, however, Ultimate Wolverine did die and never came back. meaning that there just simply are other Wolverines who have a point up on this one. Some of the best villains make some of the best heroes do their bidding for them. This is why HYDRA as an organization goes down in infamy in the Marvel Universe. HYDRA is known for brainwashing heroes into their personal puppets. Just look at what they did with Bucky. There was a time when HYDRA did the same thing to Wolverine. Teaming up with the Hand and their powers of resurrection, HYDRA actually killed Wolverine and had him resurrected as an agent of theirs. They used him to steal defense plans and kill their greatest enemies. Perhaps though, the real Wolverine was still in there somewhere, as at the very least this one was nowhere near the talent of the original. Rancor is Jabba the Hutt's favorite pet that lives under his throne. Oh wait, not the same thing. Rancor is the great-great-granddaughter of Wolverine from a distant alternate future. She is likely also the furthest departure from any other Wolverine you might see. She became a dictator over a human colony. The stories of her ancestors were stories of blood and violence. Combining that with her natural anger, she was destined to turn into a villain. She does not actually have the strength of a Wolverine, but her villainous mindset makes her one scary person to come across. General James Howlett of Earth 12025 stands high in the Canadian military and royal family. He is a trusted governor and general, as well as a viceroy of a mission to find Shangri-La. He is one of his world's most beloved heroes, and along with his love interest Hercules, the two have become its greatest protectors. This version of Wolverine was part of a team that hunted down many evil versions of Charles Xavier across several dimensions. His bones were also coated in a metal called adamantine, supposedly given to him by the gods, and comes very useful on his missions as it helps him resist Xavier's psychic attacks. Apparently in alternate universes, Logan and Scott Summers just can't help but fight. During the Age of Apocalypse storyline in an alternate apocalyptic future, Wolverine was known simply as Weapon X. He was a member of the X-Men team still, but was much more unhinged than his Earth 616 counterpart. This bleak future had really done a number on Wolverine, and his aforementioned fight with Cyclops saw him lose his hand. You know if he was Deadpool, he would have just grown that thing back. But this handless Wolverine still uses both sets of claws. He's definitely not one you would want to mess with, but in the grand scheme of things he could be better. The Amalgam universe gave us some of the greatest mashups that nerds could only dream of. This lineup includes characters like Doctor Strange Fate, Thanoside, and maybe the coolest of them all, Darkclaw. That is of course a combination of the Dark Knight Batman and our very own Wolverine. Take the ferocity and strength of the Wolverine we know, and give him the detective skills, weapons, and resources of Batman. It's Wolverine's indestructibility and healing combined with the Dark Knight's impressive fighting prowess. This is one insanely powerful character and probably one of the coolest Marvel DC mashups they could have made. Most importantly, imagine what that heightened sense of smell does for his sleuthing career.
Come on! Grow those back.
Who doesn't love this coffee-making Australian treasure? One of the most definitively powerful versions of Wolverine is the portrayal of him by Hugh Jackman in the Marvel X-Men film series. There's so many things we've seen him be able to do. His mind is the only one that can take being ripped apart to go back in time. He has taken on the entire Yakuza on a quick trip to Japan. He's killed Jean Grey while she had the full power of the Phoenix Force. And most importantly, he has just decimated all kinds of people in a number of forests. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine has had both the bone claws and adamantium-laced skeleton. He has helped defeat the Sentinels, Magneto. Bit of an asterisk on that one since anytime he gets close to Magneto, he basically just gets thrown miles away. And a weird overpowered version of Deadpool. This version did ultimately die when he became Old Man Logan. But what a way to go out. Overall, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine will be remembered as one of the most powerful mutants ever put to screen. Laura Kinney, better known as X-23, is a direct clone of Logan. Sometimes that apparently makes her his daughter. Regardless, she's a ferocious version of the Wolverine character, armed with a childlike energy and a murderous rage, not to mention some foot claws. She is just as capable a fighter as her so-called father. She heals incredibly quickly, and honestly the only thing that keeps Laura Kinney from being one of the strongest versions of Wolverine is a lack of experience. Even still, she's likely had more practice with the art of stabbing and impaling than other children her age. Or at least you would hope. Maybe Michael Myers, but that's about it. Wolverine has been around a long time. So long that he's basically lived multiple different lives. In the 1940s, he actually got married to a Japanese woman named Itsu. They actually had a child together, but before he could be born, Wolverine was pulled out from hiding by the many enemies he had made over his years of slashing people. This child grew up with adopted parents and took on the name Daken. He developed all his biological father's charming personality traits, like an animalistic sense of violence and an impressive ability to hunt, not to mention near perfect healing and some claws shooting around his hand area. Overall, Daken is extremely powerful, and he's basically Wolverine with a teen angst temper. This angst actually turned to evil, as Daken may be the most villainous version of Wolverine that you would find. He defeated a lot of enemies, but eventually when he came up against the original Wolverine, he didn't stand a chance. It's likely that the original Wolverine was given incredible healing powers and an adamantium skeleton just because the writers knew how popular he would be, and they would want him to stick around for quite a while. With that being said, the original Wolverine who debuted in 1974 is still to this day one of the strongest versions of the character. He underwent the Weapon X program to get adamantium laced to his skeleton, and throughout all that time he has fought just about the baddest villains that Marvel has to offer. He has been a team member, a team leader, and a lone wolf. And at the end of the day, he's still some villain's worst nightmare. Wolverine Pool is obviously the combination we've all been waiting for. One of the several versions of the wisecracking merc with a mouth to fight in the multi-dimensional Deadpool war, Wolverine Pool is an extremely powerful character. Serving as a variant of both Wolverine and Deadpool means that fighting is this guy's bread and butter. Obviously, the two characters basically have the same power set, so just imagine giving Deadpool a pair of Wolverine claws, and you can see the absurdity that is born. Absurdity with a nice side of being able to kick just about everyone's butt. What better way to give a character a power boost than just turn them into a zombie? You take all their normal powers and add a slight hunger for human flesh. Wolverine is probably the scariest zombie you can imagine. A zombie with a healing factor is one that will keep coming back and try to devour your brain no matter how many times you try to get rid of him. Unfortunately, this Wolverine doesn't work that way. The zombie virus overwhelmed his healing factor, and his flesh is now in decay. However, he has had some cybernetic implants, and thanks to his devouring of the Silver Surfer, he also gained cosmic powers. So even though he can be defeated, he still may be the worst thing you can imagine under your bed as a child. Feral Wolverine is what happens when Magneto ripped every bit of adamantium out of Wolverine's body. I really can't blame the guy. It's kind of a crazy thing to go through, and it would make me lose my mind as well. Feral Wolverine is full-on animalistic, with almost no control over his abilities. And the trauma caused by the incident, not to mention the further mutation it caused, saw this version of Wolverine reach a level of power unseen by many others. However, he lost many strategic abilities, meaning he could be beaten by some others. The sheer strength of Feral Wolverine, however, really should scare anyone who sees him coming. Another amalgamation of two incredibly strong characters is Old Man Venom. In an alternate continuation of the Old Man Logan storyline, Venom was casually attached to a T-Rex that ate Wolverine. The symbiote then found Logan to be a much more suitable host, creating a match made in heaven. It really is perfect. Venom can eat all the organs he wants. They'll just grow back. With the powers of Venom and the wisdom of Old Man Logan, this is one combination that anyone would have trouble beating. He may not be a doctor who turns himself into a living vampire, but Vampire Wolverine is no joke. At the end of the day, Logan doesn't receive many additional powers from becoming a vampire. Speed, strength, enhanced senses, that's all classic Wolverine. What the vampire virus did add, however, was a severe increase in bloodlust, and a more evil side that would do just about anything to get it. Essentially, Wolverine with no boundaries and soulless eyes. Can you imagine if a cult named the Red Right Hand really had it out for you? Then you might know what it's like to be Wolverine. This group summoned a demon in order to possess Logan and force him to murder his own friends. This version of Wolverine was nicknamed Hellverine. He did not last long, but he forced many of the X-Men to not only battle him physically, but mentally as well. The X-Men did not want to hurt their friend, and would have rather freed his soul, meaning it took that much extra to take Hellverine down. In Old Man Logan, Wolverine fought tooth and nail against the Hulk. Then, of course, there came Weapon H, which answered the much more sought-after question of what if you combined these two Marvel behemoths? Weapon X had a Batch H facility, which experimented on a man named Clayton. This specific experiment was trying to create Hulk-Wolverine hybrids that specialized in hunting down and killing mutants. A gray hulking beast with spikes jutting from his very skin, Weapon H is a wrecking ball you just don't want to get in the way of. One of the most powerful entities in the universe is the Phoenix Force. Believed to be the cause of the end of all life in the universe, a relatively unknown version of Logan was seen by Old King Thor to be the final host of the Phoenix Force. The immense power that comes with hosting this entity has taken down some of the strongest beings in the universe. Combining it with Logan was a disastrous masterpiece that I don't think the world was quite ready for. Whether he's cutting you up or calling you bub, there's really no version of Wolverine you'd ever want to tangle with. Which version of the famed X-Man do you think is the absolute strongest?